Shall we do Itipiso? Itipiso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vichacharana Sampano Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sata Deva Manusanam Puto Bhagavati Sawa Katwa Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanaiko Pachatang Veditapo Vinyuhiti Supati Pano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Ujjapati Pano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Nyaya Pati Pano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sami Chipati Pano Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Yadidang Chatari Purisa Yukani Atta Purisa Pukkala Esa Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Huneyo Apa Huneyo Dakineyo Anjali Kalaniyo Anuttaram Punya Ketang Lokasati Tipiso Bhagava Arahang Sambuddho Vichacharana Sampano Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sata Deva Manusanam Puto Bhagavati Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanaiko Pachatam Veditapo Vinyuhiti Supati Pamno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ujjapati Pano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyaya Patipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sami Chipatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yatidang Chatari Purisa Yukani Atta Purisa Pukkala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Apahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Kalaniyo Anuttaram Punya Ketang Lokasati Tipiso Bhagava Arahang Sambuddho Vichacharana Sampano Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Purisa Dhamma Sarati Sata Deva Manusanam Puto Bhagavati Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanaiko Pachatam Veditapo Vinyuhiti Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyaya Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sami Chipatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidam Chatari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Pukkala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttarang Punya Ketang Lokasati. All right. Shall we do the meditation? Yeah. Try that again. So just a few words again. For me, difficult to explain idea of awareness being not separate and yet also discerning quality. So the question came from Edward. Maybe I could read your question, Edward. Dear Ajahn, I understand that a condition and awareness of a condition cannot be separate. However, you said they are the same. If I said they are the same, I made an error. I don't think I said that. I think they're not separate. But if I did say that, mea culpa, pardon. And what I'm just pointing is to this interesting paradox, which you can only observe in silence. You know, if it's not about an idea, and so it's necessary to bring the mind to a sense of composure and silence, and so we have the ideas of samadhi and an objective practice. But then going back to your question, and what I was trying to, and I find it difficult to sort of explain because it is a paradox. Again, if I'm just quiet and I observe the two pictures, I have to be quiet. If I'm thinking, I create difference and separation. So I'm thinking, oh, there are two pictures there. There's a sense of I'm here thinking, and those two pictures are there, which is not false. It's not false, but there's a deeper understanding, which I think we're trying to fathom. And so if the mind is silent, that's a prerequisite. So the mind is silent. And in the waiting and observing, I can place a question. Is it separate? Is awareness separate from the experience of sight? Then I have to be quiet. If I try to answer it with thought, it'll just be another opinion. So then I'm quiet. And I cannot see that awareness is one thing and the pictures are another thing. I just see this is one experience. So that's one aspect. But then the other aspect is that there is also discernment, distinction. So I can say that these objects are in awareness because the visual thing is distinct from the audio thing. That's also true. There is distinction. But I don't think I said they are the same. I hope I didn't, because that would be, maybe I did. So we'll go back to the tapes and check it. And this paradox, which I think if you play with that, like if you play with that non-separation, like with thoughts, say. So you notice the thought is kind of rambling on. And what we usually do is we create a separation. I am thinking, I should not be thinking. Or I want to stop thinking. So there's a separation of me and this thing called thought. But if you say actually thought is not separate, is thought separate from awareness? And you just wait and you put that kind of suggestion in, you'll see that the awareness is always there. And part of it is sometimes thought and part of it isn't sometimes thought. So there's both discernment. And I think that takes you to what we mean by non-duality. That there isn't that again, when I get into language, I really get in a tizzy around this one. So just, as a suggestion, Edward, see that paradox, but live that paradox. See what happens to your practice. That's what I'm pointing to. So I'm not saying that it's the same, but I'm pointing to the non-separation as an experience. So we say that this experience is in awareness, true, and that on some level also true that that awareness isn't a thing. And that gives the sense of awareness kind of being unconditioned, uncreated, infinite. I don't know if that does it for you, Edward, but write me another note if that's even more confusing. But good question. So we can observe how sensations are in awareness, present as objects unfolding in awareness, but also we can see that awareness is not separate. And that's a paradox which intellectually I don't worry about the paradox. I try to live that. I try to, when I practice, say, and I like to use sound a lot. I'll listen to sound and they'll say that's in awareness. And then I'll notice, but awareness is not separate. And that, to be honest, that just takes me to deep peace. That, using both of those. Whereas if I say, I am listening to that sound, or I am the same as that sound, that's still a sense of I. The I am anything, and I just live in silence and do that contemplation, then I think I come to the Bahia Sutta. The Bahia Sutta is, just for those of you who don't know it, the Bahia has the reputation of having the quickest insight in the Buddhist texts. And to make a long story short, Bahia requests a teaching in brief. The Buddha is actually on alms round. And the Buddha says to him, not now, not a good time. And Bahia says, well, death is very imminent. You could die at any time. So please give me some teaching. So the Bahia is given the teaching in the scene. When Bahia, you train in this way. When in the scene, there's just the scene. When in the herd, there's just the herd. Where in the sense, there's just the sense. Where in the cognized, there's just the cognized. When you train like that, Bahia, there will be no here, no there, no in between. And just this is the end of suffering. So Bahia takes that teaching. The bhikkhus continue on alms round. They finish I think it was Sawati, they finish the alms round. They come to the gates of the city, and Bahia is dead. He's been gored by a young bull. And the monks ask the Buddha, what should we do with Bahia's body? And the Buddha says, venerate his ashes. Bahia attained to enlightenment in that short statement. So the way I approach that is through this kind of reflection on awareness. So when I ask myself, again, the mind has to be silent. So we do need composure and collectedness. Once that feels really solid, and I have no emotional issues I'm dealing with. If I'm dealing with emotional issues, then I got to do that work, right? Which I've done too many years of. So then like, is there separation? Is there two things? And my mind is silent. I can't find two things. And then that takes me to that idea, in the scene, there is just the scene. When thought comes up, it differentiates and discerns. And the duality of life is true as well. Because if I want to go to the toilet, I've got to go over there. Or if I want to go to lunch, I have to go over there. So we're not dismissing that in some kind of weird way. But I feel that this takes you to a deeper possibility of what consciousness is about, what awareness is about, and what hopefully the pointers to the unconditioned are kind of pointing to. And so these are very subtle things, very subtle things. But so often our preoccupation in our spiritual life is psychological. If you look at what we're all dealing with, we're dealing with our fears, with arguments with our in-laws, or debts which we can't pay, or there's all kinds of stuff we're dealing with, and much of life is that way. And I always ask people, what is the spiritual part of your life? Is Buddhism just a really good psychological methodology? Is it just mindfulness and stress reduction? Or is there a component there that is profoundly peaceful and different? And obviously there must be, because this is what the Buddha was teaching us. So let's try that same old meditation and see where we go with that. Again, I'll set me a little clock for 45 minutes. Just a recommendation, when you start to get restless and you want to look around or scratch your ear or look up at the ceiling fan or do all those significant things, which is restlessness, don't. See if you can just stay still. Now, if your body's hurting, then fine, but resist the temptation to just follow restlessness. Just have enough mindfulness. Oh, this is the desire to look away. This is the desire to whatever you want, and just stay, because that deepens your meditation. It deepens your meditation. Whereas if you just take, like I scratch my nose here and then I just check if the wood is okay, but if you use that very impulse as a way of observing, oh, this is the way it is, that takes you deeper into your meditation. If you force yourself, I'm not going to move, I'm not going to move, you'll hate meditation. So it takes intelligence and curiosity, but that's why the stillness is so helpful. So especially like in yoga nidra, in lying meditation, if you're trying out that posture, lying meditation, the desire to scratch or roll over or move or shift is the meditation. And it fits very nicely into the Four Noble Truths, that there is discontent, and that discontent is a function of desire. And the end of discontent is not the fulfillment of desire, but it's actually the cessation of desire. The fulfillment of desire can be a disaster. Now, consumerism tells us that the fulfillment of desire is really where you should be at, right? So buy my product. A heroin addict, as an extreme, thinks that the fulfillment of desire is having the heroin, and sure, that feels good, but the guy's finished, right? Because so fulfillment of desire at some level is biologically necessary. I need food, I need shelter, and so on. But fulfillment of desire can, and very often does, lead to more desire. One Netflix, like when you finish something exciting on the internet, don't you want to look at the next one? Doesn't one cat video lead to another cat video? And then a dog video, whatever. So you look at that, that's the pattern of fulfilled desire. And our culture says the fulfillment of desire is the goal of life. The Buddha says fulfillment of desire is sometimes a disaster because it leads to more need. Not totally, because desire is necessary. You need to eat and so on. But at some level. And so the cessation of desire is different than the fulfillment of desire. Now, the cessation of desire is a different ballgame because it takes a lot of patience. So in meditation, one of the things you learn to do is you look at the desire to move, but you don't rigidly not move. You contemplate, oh, the desire to move feels this way. And as you observe it, and you don't move, and you don't buy into it, you notice the cessation of desire. And the cessation of desire is peace. Think about it logically. If I'm sitting here and I really don't want, need, or anything like that, then the mind is peaceful. But as soon as I want something, if it's biologically necessary, if I need to go to the toilet or I'm starving or whatever, then sure, and that's not a problem. But just the kind of need for the mind always to go outside in terms of whatever it is, if we observe that, then that will deepen our meditation. Right, so back to my clock. I keep going off on these segues. So we'll use that same pattern. Again, set up your posture. And the reason I sort of suggest make it 10% more comfortable, so you're kind of deliberately making yourself as comfortable as seems reasonable. And then having done that, then you kind of, okay, I've done that. Now let's try stillness. Now, does the word stillness make you tense? Well, that's extra. But what would stillness feel in the body? What would it feel like? And notice just that suggestion begins to compose the mind. Because to notice stillness in the body, you need to be in the present moment. So composure, collectedness feels like this. Then noticing the mood of the mind. So for you in Southeast Asia in general, it's the evening, you might be tired. For me, it's the morning, I just had too much coffee. So I feel different. So, the mood of the mind, maybe nothing special. And then making the intention now to follow the meditation instruction. So anything else that comes up, just put it aside and deal with it after the meditation. And now we're going to not try to find anything or get rid of anything. So non-desire, but just know what it feels like in each of these bodily areas. So if it's very sensitive and there's a lot of sensation there, fine. And if there's nothing, fine. So the attitude of awareness, knowing the way things are, is what we're cultivating. Right, so bring attention to the inside of your mouth. Feel the floor of the mouth. Now let sensations become conscious. The back of the throat, inside the left cheek, inside the right cheek, the ceiling of the mouth, the lower jaw, sensations, radiating vibrations, lower jaw, lower lip, the lower teeth, and the lower gums. The upper jaw, the upper lip, the teeth and the gums. Feel the tongue as sensation. Feel the whole mouth as sensation. Coalesce all those feelings into one mass of sensation. Again, you're not creating an image of the mouth. Relax the eyes. Not conceptualizing, relax the brain. Just sensation, just the way it is. Feel the whole mouth. Inside the cheeks up to the ear canals. Feel those areas as sensation. And then upwards to the outer ear. Feel the sensations that are the outer ears. Both ears and mouth. Bring them together as one mass of sensation. So nothing else is important now. Plans, each time the mind goes to planning or whatever it might be, or even analysis. Am I doing this right? Or that kind of thought. Keep letting go of thought. And just stay with the sensation. The sensations that are the nose, the bridge of the nose, the nostrils, the whole nose as sensation, manifesting in consciousness, in awareness. The eyes, the sensations that are the eyes, the hollows, where the eyes cradled. The hollows of the eyes as sensation. And the eyes themselves. The whole area, then both eyes as sensation. Follow line behind the eyes to the middle of the brain to the inside of the head. Again, this might not be very obvious, but that's okay. The knowing is the same. The awareness is the same. Sensations are strong or weak. Forehead. Feel the forehead, behind the forehead. So notice you compose attention on the forehead. Again, it's not a really strong concentration trying to find something, some specific point. So it's you notice the sensations are in space, that they're radiant or vibratory, whatever language works. Forehead, draw a line from the forehead to the middle of the brain, inside the skull. Scalp, top of the head. Feel the sensations at the top of the head. Draw a line to the center of the brain again. Back of the head. Feel the back of the head. Sensations in space, in awareness. Now feel the whole head. Feel the mouth, ears, nose, eyes, forehead, scalp, back of the head. Feel the whole head as one mass of sensations, vibrating, radiating in space. In awareness. Feel the whole head, not as concept, but as sensation. Attention down to the neck. Feel the back of the neck, the sides of the neck, and the throat. Collect attention, composure on the neck. Collectedness is not trying to get something. That would be tension, wouldn't it? Trying to look for something. Whereas collectedness is knowing what is. It's like this. Feel the throat. Feel the neck. Feel the left side of the neck to the left shoulder. Let that become conscious as sensation. Feel the upper arm, left side upper arm, the left elbow, the left forearm, the left wrist, back of the left hand, thumb, index finger, middle finger, ring finger, small finger, the palm of the hand. Feel the whole left hand as sensation. Let that vibrate in consciousness, in awareness. No becoming, non-resistance, just the way it is. Feel the left wrist, the left forearm, the left elbow, upper arm and shoulder. Feel that whole area of the left arm. Feel the whole left arm. Right side of the neck, connected to the right shoulder as sensation. Upper arm, right side. Right elbow. Right forearm. Right wrist. The sensation that is the back of the right hand. The thumb. Index finger. Middle finger. Ring finger. And small finger. The palm of the right hand. Coalesce all that together, the whole right hand as sensation. The right wrist, the right forearm, elbow, upper arm, shoulder, the whole right arm from shoulder to head. One mass of sensations manifesting in awareness. Both arms, feel both arms as sensation. Then bring all that together, neck, back of the head, top of the head, forehead, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and tongue. One mass of sensations in awareness. Composure, collectedness here and now. Bring attention to the hollow of your throat. Draw a line into the inside of the chest. Feel the walls of the chest inside. Feel the back of the chest. Inside the left wall. Inside the right wall. And the front of the chest. And the organs inside that cavity, the diaphragm, the lungs, and the heart. And bring that all together as one mass of sensations in awareness, here and now, collected, composed. Again, non-becoming, non-resistance. It's just like this. The abdomen, the abdominal area. Feel the belly. Inside the abdominal area. Feel the back. Feel the left wall. Feel the right wall. Feel the front, feel the belly, and any organs you can notice, the kidneys at the back, liver, intestines, and so on. And that whole area of the abdomen now. Bring it all together as one mass of sensations. No thinking, no need to think. Abdomen, bring attention down to the pelvis, the pelvic area, the pelvic bones, the weight of the body on your cushion. Inside the pelvic area, the back wall. The left side. And the right side. The whole pelvic area. The organs inside, the pelvic cavity, reproductive organs, urinary muscles, and so on. Feel the whole pelvic area, bring it together as one mass of sensations. Now coalesce the whole torso, pelvis, abdomen, chest as one vibrating, radiating mass of sensations in awareness. Composure, collectedness. That's the chainsaw, we can hear it. Not a problem, just a sound. So the whole torso, feel the arms. And the neck. Feel the head, the back of the head, the top of the head, the forehead, eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and tongue. Feel the whole head. So from the torso all the way to the head, one mass of sensations. Feels like this. Feel the left hip. The left thigh. The left knee. The left foreleg. The left ankle. And the left foot. Feel the whole left leg in awareness. Feel the right leg. The right hip, start with the right hip. The right thigh. The right knee. Lower leg. Ankle and foot. Feel both legs as a mass of sensations. And then bring out that all together. The legs, the torso, the arms, the neck, and the head. All together as one mass of sensations in awareness. So now let's play around with that question Edward had. So there's the sensations of the body. And for me, the sound of the chainsaw is quite loud. I don't know, I guess you can hear that. but just that whole sense experience now. If you're quiet, is awareness separate from all of that? If you think, yeah, I'm here and the chainsaw's out there, yeah. But if you don't think, and in the herd there's just the herd, is the separation. And yet, there is discernment of change. And the sound or the bodily sensation is in awareness. That's also true. Both are true, I think. At least that's the way it seems to me. And practicing like choiceless awareness is living in that kind of paradox. So one with sound, not separate, but also sound is in awareness, discernment, or bodily feeling. Same thing. This kind of investigation has to be done from silence. So this meditation tries to get you to the silence first. So bring up the thought, I am. I am. What does that feel like? As a thought. And then bring that down, feel the sensations in the throat. And place that thought at the center of the chest, at the heart. I am. Let go of the am. I. And then let go of the thought, I. Be that awareness. So I'll leave that and be silent again. And let's practice through for the rest of the sitting in silence.
Pramachaloka Dipati Sahampati Katanjalian Diwarangaya Jata Santi Dasata Parajata Jatika Ese tu Dhamma Anukampi Mampaja.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Maybe just before I attempt to answer the questions, that the last bit I was talking about the fulfillment of desire as opposed to the cessation of desire, that I think that's super important, really. So consumerism encourages the fulfillment of desire, and then the acquisition of things that are necessary for the fulfillment of desire, whether it's whatever it is, clothing, gadgets, video experiences. And if you keep watching that, you can see that although it was fun, you want more fun. Or it was disappointing, so you want more fun. It's the same problem. That's an interesting one, isn't it? Like, what do they call it? Buyer's remorse. You know, I guess you go on Amazon or wherever you go, and then you, this is the one. This is really, I really need this. And then they send it in the post, and they say, I thought it was a bit more yellow in that color, in that jumper I wanted to get. So you feel disappointment. And rather than noticing that desire is oftentimes disappointing, you think, I made the wrong choice. So then you go back to the website and you get all excited, right? Oh, yeah, well, wait a minute, this one might be better. And then you buy another one, right? And even if it was the correct yellow color on your jumper, the experience of satisfaction or non-satisfaction, as the Rolling Stones used to sing. I grew up with the Rolling Stones song, "You Can't Get No Satisfaction," by the way. That's my era when I was in university. Anyway, disappointment or fulfillment still leads to the same desire. And what's the cessation of desire? What does that feel like? Well, that's a much more difficult thing to both realize and do. Let's say on a less facetious level, just like emotions. Let's say you tend to feel insecure, and you always need the reassurance of someone. So you start to feel, some insecurity with your relationship with whoever, and then you say to the person, "Am I all right?" And that's the desire to feel secure. And the person says, "Yeah, you're fine, you're fine." And that's the fulfillment of desire. Oh, good, I'm fine with you. And then maybe the next day, the same feeling of insecurity comes up, and you say to them, "Am I all right? Am I all right?" And they say, "No, you're fine, you're fine." Ah, that's great. Do that 20 times, and the person will eventually say to you, "You're an idiot." And then you'll feel insecure too. You're not going to win that way. Stop doing that. You're not all right. Okay, so then you're practicing the Four Noble Truths, and you're looking at desire now. So this is very important, because you're getting to a deeper level of consciousness rather than the superficial level of the storyline and the narrative. Not that the narrative in itself is in some way superficial. I mean, you have to live some kind of a narrative. You know, you are someone doing something, going somewhere, right? But always this kind of second level of consideration is, yeah, I want this person X to like me, but what's the desire here? Desire is coming from insecurity, needing reassurance in this case. And then if you have enough discernment, experience, some knowledge base of the teaching, you can say to yourself, oh, okay, what if I don't follow that pattern of asking for reassurance? What if I do that? Now that's different than trying to find the fulfillment of desire. Now you're taking on a more, in this sense, maybe a more courageous attitude of looking at feeling insecure and just observing that sense of insecurity. And so then the person kind of looks at you and you think, oh, look at that. They don't like me. They have nothing in their mind, maybe. Maybe they're just picking their nose or scratching their head and you're taking it personally. But you begin to see, well, what's the problem really? Is it that this person doesn't like me, or is it this insecurity? And as you start to see that pattern, you say, yeah, let's look at the insecurity. Now that's much more difficult, because that is the feeling of unfulfilled desire. And the feeling of unfulfilled desire is not pleasant. Fulfillment of desire is pleasant, but pleasantness begets the need for more pleasantness. But pleasantness always has its opposite of unpleasantness. You cannot sustain permanent pleasantness. So you, as a contemplative, you begin to challenge yourself, I would say, to look at the discomfort of feeling inadequate, or feeling lesser, or feeling unloved, or whatever it is. And you see that that is an object in awareness. And then you make a determination just to bear witness to that and say, okay, how long is this going to last? Is this permanent? Does it change? And you try to see that not as a narrative, but as a sankhara. It's not really about me and that person X. It's about this habit that arises in consciousness in this particular way. So then the witnessing or the awareness of change, and this becomes mindfulness of anicca sanya. So now mindfulness is not just I'm feeling like this, but actually it has a theme in it, and the theme is anicca. So you ask yourself, you could say to yourself, this will change, but that can just be a kind of Buddhist dogma. But actually, you can look, is this permanent? So you can look at the feeling itself. Is that feeling, what is that feeling? If you have the space to do that, what does it actually feel like physically? What does a mood feel like? And all the time you're developing awareness, presence. And then the question, is this solid? Is it just one thing? What is it before I think about it? This kind of inquiry. And it's not an analytical inquiry, it's an inquiry which is trying to bring attention to this very real cyclic problem that you suffer from. And then eventually you do see it does change. But it changes in a way which wasn't from the fulfillment of desire, but it came about through the cessation of desire. The insecurity arises, it stays for a while. You don't just buy into it. You don't buy into the perceptions of I'm no good, and all that kind of stuff. You just feel it as it is in the cognized as just a cognized. That is a difficult practice, and that's not easy. And if you just bear witness to it as awareness, then its nature is to cease. Its nature is to change. But what changes with it is the desire relationship to the feeling of insecurity, because the feeling of insecurity is unpleasant. I want the pleasant, right? And so the desire is the seeking of the pleasant and the annihilation of the unpleasant. But now I'm willing to be with the unpleasant. And this is Vedana. This is the Vedana, the affective tone. I think in psychology they say that the tone of negativity, not wanting kind of tone to the feeling. But now I'm willing to be with that. This is just Vedana. Vedana arises, stays for all and ceases. This is just Sankhara. It arises and ceases. This is an emotion. It arises and ceases. And that becomes the background or the contemplative theme of sati. It's not just kind of, ooh, I feel terrible. No, I'm investigating. And then if I keep doing that, then I'll be eventually say, well, that's not permanent. Something shifts, person says something, I'm in another environment, and I see the cessation of both the feeling of insecurity, but also the desire. And that is the piece of Nirodha, the third noble truth, the cessation. Whereas the other, the fulfillment of desire, is the perpetuation of the first noble truth. There is suffering, and I'm creating more suffering. So you know, like do that when you're on the internet, say, and you've looked at something interesting. When it ceases, when that interest ceases, even if it's in the middle of a program, say if it's a program you're watching, right, and it's boring, and then you think, oh, I'll flick to something else. That's the same pattern. Boredom, don't want boredom. Look for something interesting. Flick, 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 flick. Oh, there's a good cat video or whatever. And well, that's interesting. So stimulation, that's nice, that's pleasant. Then look at the end of that when it finally ceases. Does the desire cease? No, the video ceases, yeah. And what's the feeling there? The feeling is, let's watch a football game or whatever you like to do. There's the desire for yet another, until you get so bored with it, so fed up with it, you go have a sandwich. but that's still desire. And then once you've had your sandwich and you're just exhausted, then you crash out and you annihilate consciousness with sleep, which is another desire. Now I'm kind of overplaying this, but you can really look at that, can't you? Especially with media. Very interesting. You can really look at that. So what if, you know, you're watching some Buddhist program or whatever program, and you start to get bored? Well, why not watch a boring program? I mean, that's like, what? Watch a boring program? I mean, I didn't come here to get bored, but wouldn't that also be interesting? Then you're looking at the mind. Okay, I hate this video. This is the worst video ever made. So the desire doesn't want that. The desire wants something interesting. So now don't flick onto the next whatever. But just look, oh, this is disinterest. This is boredom. And you don't have to punish yourself by looking at this right to the end, but look at, where's the cessation of desire here? When does desire cease? And explore, even in the midst of our kind of media culture, explore that kind of model. If you're like addicted to these things, you just keep going and going and going, then I suggest like kick the thing in the head, get rid of it. Because that's the kind of weird addiction modern culture has, right? But just look at something, and not to kind of be totally like just with the iPhone. Use that desire to look at your emails or whatever platforms you use, like before you do it, look at, this is desire to look, like be fully conscious of desire to go out into objects, not as an absolute, no, I must never do that, I'm a bad person. It's not a moral thing, it's a restless thing, right? So you kind of, okay, I'll do the practice of waiting for 5 minutes, right? It's not a long time, and yet it can be a long time if you're used to looking at it all the time. So then you look, oh, this is unfulfilled desire. It feels this way. That's not comfortable, but it's in the cessation of desire where we find peace, not the fulfillment of desire. So, and this kind of attitude of contemplation in all aspects of life just keeps informing you of the path and the work we do on the path, keeps informing you about the structure of the Four Noble Truths. There is the attachment to craving, there's the abandonment of craving, cessation, and you get more and more a kind of discernment, intelligence in the back of your life, as it were, behind your life, within your life, that begins to operate from that model, but without being harsh, you know, and kind of super ascetic and that, because that can just be unkind, so on. But it's worthy of investigation, I think. So then with the emotional world, say, which is much tougher to deal with, say something like the emotion of anger. To get rid of the anger, you usually go outwards and blame, or yell, or speak, or send a terrible email or whatever. Or you go inwards and you say, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad. That's desire trying to get rid of anger. So the desire goes up into thought, and then it's their fault, they're no good, or it's my fault, I'm no good. That's all attachment. And that's the pursuit of desire. Tanha creates the whole idea of self and so on. Now what you're trying to do is look at the whole sense of self as an object. Because thinking, self-thinking, they're no good, they're to blame, I'm no good, I'm to blame, that is an object. Now, if you keep your attention on the sense of I as it arises and ceases, you begin to see what the personality is. It arises and ceases as thought. And if you get more and more refined in that attention on the sense of self as thought, you take the mind to what we call emptiness. Not vacuity, not nothingness, but where the self-definitions of me being a certain kind of person, that falls away and you get the silence of what we call sunyata, or emptiness. So the attention is on the self-making, I-making, ahankara, mimankara, in consciousness. And your refuge is no longer the I thought, it's the knowing the I thought as an object. What would that mean in terms of something simple like anger? Well, it would mean that you would make the intention to bear witness to the anger. You'd shift your model of dealing with anger from thought, I would say, to sensation and mood. You'd shift it from self-identity, I'm angry, I'm a bad person. Or, you know, what we might do as Buddhists is then do metta bhavana. So you feel bad about being angry or resentful or unforgiving, and then you overlay that with another sense of self. May they be well, may they be well. And that's better than wishing them bad, but it can still be involved with ego, with sense of self. It's not a bad thing. Whereas I think primarily you have to, first of all, see that metta is the acceptance of anger, first of all. And anger is uncomfortable. I want to get away from it. I want to blame. And then if I'm with that discomfort, then you're practicing knowing desire, which leads to the cessation of desire, rather than the fulfillment of desire. It's the same pattern. Emotionally, it's much more difficult, no? It can be very, very powerful. So the Four Noble Truths are applicable in these interesting ways. And if you're doing it with something simple like your Facebook page or whatever, and just don't go there when you want to go there for 5 or 10 minutes, you're practicing the Four Noble Truths. Restraint, knowing desire, letting go of desire, and so on. So let me just approach these questions. Please, can you comment on my meditation practice? I attempt to keep my mind in the heart space at the center of the chest, and after a while a thought will come. And as soon as I realize I have followed it out of the heart space, I ask mentally, to whom has this thought come? And the answer is to me. Then I ask, who am I? And this usually breaks the thought formation, proliferation, and I get back into the heart space. Until inevitably the next thought comes. But sometimes for a brief while, in between the two thoughts, there is a space or a gap. When there is a glimpse of silence, of quietude, is this what Luang Por means about trying to come into the deathless, the unformed awareness? Am I doing this right? Is my practice correct? I would be grateful for your advice. Yes, I'd say this is what I'm trying to point to. And that space, I would say, it is what we refer to as sunyata, or emptiness, where the sense of self falls away. And that's done not through acquisition, but through noticing that the sense of self is something that comes and goes in awareness and in a beginning as thought. Later on, it gets even more profound, even as the doer, the sense of me doing something, going somewhere. So I would encourage this person to, carry on with that, and don't try to find anything. Trust in awareness, as Luang Por has been emphasizing. Trust in awareness. Just keep that, and then allow the mystery to kind of unfold for you. The thing is, when you notice that silent gap, then you try to look for it, and then you're in desire. So it's the cessation of desire, the trusting of awareness, which works. And any kind of seeming a profound experience in meditation and a kind of insightful experience like that very quickly creates the desire for repetition. Confidence in like you're saying, go to the heart space. That's not the desire for repetition. That's the skill of repetition. It's not the desire to get what you had. It's the skill of taking the same pathway. So the same insights are possible if the approach is from non-desire, from non-becoming. But memory is very tricky, isn't it? You have a kind of really neat experience in meditation. Next time you sit down, I want that. Huh? And so in the beginning, you say to yourself, it's like this, and really pay attention to this, looking for something, looking for that experience, and try to keep making it, it's like this. So even if the next meditation is a total horror show, right? Your mind is just a total mess. Just trust in awareness. This is what a horror show feels like. This is what a total mess feels like. Trust in that, because the desire to get rid of the horror show, to get that experience you had last time, won't work. Huh? So you just take day by day. But I would say that's a kind of natural result when you notice the sense of self as an object rather than be the subject. So Luang Por mentioned Qigong is one of the postures for meditation. Can Qigong attain samadhi, or is it used to develop body awareness at the beginning of meditation only? Can Luang Por please share more details? Unfortunately, I have never done Qigong. I've done it like twice, so I have no idea what its effect is. Sorry. But if you would tune in to Ajahn Sucitto's meditations, he teaches Qigong. He's one of our, I think he's the only monk that teaches Qigong in our kind of retreat practices. So look him up, Ajahn Sucitto. And he was teaching us here, but I'm not conversant with this, so I can't help there. But do seek out his retreats and his teachings. He's very good on that. And why, Luang Por, why do we scan our body? When we scan our body, we start from the mouth, then the top of the head. Is there any specific reason for that? No doctrinal reason. You could start anywhere. You could start in your left elbow or your little toe. It wouldn't really matter. But the thing about the head and the organs of sense, the mouth, the nose, they're very sensitive. So it's a kind of good gateway into sensitivity. You know, the mouth is very, very sensitive, isn't it? And the nose, the nostrils, very, very sensitive. You know, if you started at what's the least sensitive part of my body? Probably like the back of my left shoulder blade or something like that. It might not be so obvious. And then, so that's maybe, I'm not sure, that's why it works for me. and getting in touch with sensitivity, right? By letting it become conscious, and then going through the head like that, you kind of get an idea of what you're doing. And then you kind of flow through the rest of the body. So then if some bits of the body aren't very sensitive, no problem. You're establishing that sense of knowing on bodily sensation. But this kind of practice is done in many, many ways. It's one of many ways. And I usually don't repeat meditation practices. I kind of vary them, but I thought this time I'd just try to do one. Because I think sometimes people get confused and they think, well, should I do metta bhavana? Should I do sweeping? Da, 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 da. So I thought I'd just stick with one pattern, and then JC and Joyce can give me some feedback if that was effective or not. All right. Dear Luang Por, while meditating just now, I felt the mind moved automatically to the center of the chest, and it went out again and back again. Feeling tired of these ever-changing things outside. And the separation from being the awareness would happen when a thought or emotion or something arose. And it was like we're a separate, and it was like that was where a separate entity was formed. Was this what is referred to as the mind going out is the source of suffering? What Luang Por recommends. Let me read that again. While meditating just now, I felt that the mind moved automatically to the center of the chest, and it went out again and back again, feeling tired of those ever-changing things outside. And the separation from being the awareness would happen when a thought or an emotion or something else arose. And it was like that was where a separate entity was formed. Was this what is referred to as the mind going out is the source of suffering? I'm not sure if I got it, but when thought arises, typically, there is a sense of identity with the thought rather than with awareness. And then typically, there is a noticing of that. And then there's a sense of I've been thinking too much. And all of that activity is going out into the sense object. So if in that moment where thought has stopped, if you put the question, was awareness ever absent, or was presence ever absent? That's the way I like to put it. And you put a lot of attention into the end of thought, into that gap, rather than trying to get rid of thought, you'll notice that presence is never absent. And then the sense of your home ground is presence, and that the moving outward into thought or to experience is usually that movement outward is a function of desire. I can know the experience of sound or thought or feeling as an object coming and going. I can go out to that. I can look at a bird, but it's in full presence. But when the mind goes out with desire, I want, or fascination, or whatever it is, it gets caught up in samsara, in the world of things. So I'm not sure if I'm answering this, but I would say, whatever you're doing, your reflective mind is working quite nicely. So don't worry about the doubt. Just keep trusting in awareness. And then your question will be answered if you trust in awareness. So now you have a very interesting question about what's actually going on with awareness. How does the sense of self functioning or suffering? And that's a excellent reflective faculty that is functioning. And I would say don't worry about the analytical part, solving it through thought, but let awareness give you the answer, whatever the answer might be. So trust in awareness and see what happens. So when the doubt comes up, is this what the guy means? Don't worry about that. Just see the doubt itself is also an object in awareness. And if you go out into that doubt as thoughts, not that doubt is wrong, but if you keep that, then you're caught in the analytical mind, which is an object coming and going. So without dismissing doubt, right, without dismissing the use of analysis, you also have to see that doubt is an object in awareness that comes and goes. And finding the balance there of using doubt to understand some analysis, and yet not always relying on analysis, relying on no thought, relying on awareness. That's important too. And where that balance comes, each of us has to figure out. But you can, in this instance, when a question like that comes up, is this what he means? Just say, I don't know. Allow yourself not to know. Don't know. That's how I think Korean Buddhism works. That's a stupid generality, I'm sorry. There is a part in Korean Buddhism that I have heard where they use doubt, and other traditions in the Sino part of the Buddhist world. And I've heard on the rumor mills that a Roshi in a Zendo might just yell, "What?" to everyone, "What? What is it?" And everyone wakes up, but that question, if you answer it, well, what's he talking about? What am I supposed to answer? That's not the idea. What is it? And that's to bring you to silence and knowing just the way things are. So with a doubt, you can just do that. Say, I don't know. Or you can say, well, who's asking? But you don't look for an answer. So trusting in no thought, trusting in awareness is oftentimes challenged by the analytical mind. We are probably all intellectuals to some extent. Our powers of analysis are quite strong. The way we might make our living is through analysis. So it's a powerful, powerful part of our life. And so when we approach meditation, sure, some cause and effect analysis is necessary, but at some point your mind becomes quiet enough that you don't need to do that. And that's what we call the third fetter of doubt, or the hindrance of doubt in meditation and samadhi practice. So knowing doubt is doubt and not needing an answer is a very freeing kind of insight. Okay. What is the difference between mindfulness and awareness? I don't differentiate. I know some people will, but I don't parse these things out so much. I use many things: awareness, presence. I don't use mindfulness that much. It's just my preference of words. So when I use mindfulness, I suppose I like the idea of a theme, whereas presence, awake, Buddho, now is the knowing, a kind of a whole range of language. So it's not so important which is which, I think. What's important is what's going on. And whatever language that points to that. So quite often I'll use a whole bunch of language, and out of 3 or 4 words, one might nail it for you, but might not nail it for another person. So that's why kind of a range of words might be helpful. Luang Por, I am a female layperson in a helping profession. Perhaps by nature, my mind tends to be busy with ideas of how to help people. As I age and I serve seniors older than me, I really feel that Dhamma is the best medicine to the inevitability of aging, sickness, and death. However, this transcendent knowledge and practice is not easy to pick up. That's why Buddhist monks and nuns dedicate their life to learn and practice. Luang Por has even joked about the Arahant project and the Bodhisattva project, which could be in parallel or something like that. Could you please explain what kind of relationships could have between these 2 projects in our practice? Another egotistic way to ask this is whether it will expedite or slow down liberation. is there any synonymous word for bodhicitta from Theravada or your perspective? And I hope to get your guidance on that. So again, I'm not kind of hardcore linguist, so some of my language I'll probably get in trouble with. But the word bodhicitta, I think that's the Mahayana word. Yeah. So, but the equivalents we have are the Brahma Viharas, the metta, karuna, mudita, upekkha, and dana, generosity. So when those are functioning, you can see that my concern is for the welfare of others. But also, the non-dual approach to the four Brahma Viharas is more in line with the stream of consciousness. So the concept that I'm here and others are out there is true, and to serve others is a good thing. But also, if I drop that concept of self and other, and I look at the five khandhas formulation of Buddhism, and I see stream of consciousness, then I see that the Brahma Viharas are necessary all the time, whether it's to a perceived notion of myself or others. So the sense of otherness falls away, and what replaces otherness is simply sankharas arising and ceasing. Are they wholesome or unwholesome? Irrespective of me sitting on my own or taking care of elderly people. So in stream of consciousness, is the particular mind state wholesome or unwholesome? If it's unwholesome, then I try to abandon the unwholesome and cultivate the wholesome, right? Then that sort of seeming contradiction between, or not contradiction, or what is it? Maybe like seeming like there are two practices going on, bodhicitta and arahant, in this kind of language. It doesn't really make any sense, because all of us, whether Mahayana, Theravada, or whatever spirituality, is abandoning the unwholesome and cultivating the wholesome must be a universal practice, because it would be the best for myself and others. And you do get this argument that arahants are selfish sometimes in Mahayana. And then a Theravada thinks, what? It's by definition, that's kind of doesn't work, doesn't compute. So what I think, I might be wrong, the use of the word arahant in Mahayana is different than the use of the word arahant in Theravada. And this is where language gets tricky. Over 2,500 years of history, the language is used in different ways in different contexts. And so you've heard me tell this story. It was such a great story. And I've only got a few stories. When Luang Por visited England in, I guess it would have been 79, probably. There was a place called Manjushri Institute in Cumberland, and it was a Mahayana Tibetan center. And we knew the director, who was a good friend of Luang Por Sumedho's, and the director of the Manjushri Institute. And we heard that the people in Manjushri thought that we were selfish and we were trying to be arahants. And when you think about it, it's like such a contradiction of language. And so Luang Por was invited to visit. You've heard this story, Joyce, I think. But so they went out by car, and Luang Por heard this story about bodhisattvas and arahants, and also he had seen that, or someone had told him about the Mahayana version of Mahakassapa raising the flower. Was it Mahakassapa? Yeah. Mahakassapa raising a lotus and just saying nothing. And then everyone said, oh, he knows, right? So that's a Mahayana story. We don't have that Theravada. So Luang Por had heard about this. He goes to Manjushri, and I wasn't there, unfortunately. I was taking care of Chithurst, or at Chithurst. And apparently, in some gathering, there's a flower there, and he picks it up and shows it to everyone. And everyone goes, whoa, that was he had such good moves, Luang. And so then he was, Luang Por could be just the most charming, charismatic person you've ever seen. He could be fierce, but if he wanted to, he could just lay the charm on and charisma. And he gave a talk, and you probably heard this. The essence of it was, don't be an arahant, don't be a bodhisattva, don't be anything. If you're anything, you'll suffer. So take no identities, right? Take no prisoners. So these kinds of ideas become kind of coagulated in the dogma of any tradition. And then when it becomes a position, a dogma, then it's in opposition to other dogmas, and it gets kind of silly that way. So back to the question. So the word bodhisattva in the Pali tradition refers to the Buddha before enlightenment. So the like Siddhartha, the Bodhisattva Siddhartha, we say, that's the language we use. Then the Bodhisattva idea was completely transformed in Mahayana Buddhism. And I'm not familiar with the theology of that or how it transformed. So you have to ask a master in that tradition. But I use it as a archetype. I use it as an archetype of karma yoga, of service, of giving, of motherhood. You know, that kind of service to others, which is very selfless. And as an icon, not as an icon, as an archetype, I find it very helpful to kind of, that's a beautiful image of human endeavor, rather than as a doctrinal position. If I take it as a doctrine, that's just thought. But as if I take it as an archetype, I don't need much thought. So then when I look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama, I think, yeah, what he's doing is I love it. I love what he's doing. But then I think of Ajahn Chah. He served this whole society. You know, what's the difference? They're both magnificent beings. But as an archetype of that which is in me, wants to serve, wants to help, appreciates that from others, is to me a noble perception to hold in consciousness. But then its other is that if my life is totally externalized and it's all about a kind of duality of me and others, then I'll burn out. I'll become a kind of Buddhist social worker who does a lot of good, but maybe I'll just burn out. Now, that's not selfish to me. It's reasonable. And it's also saying, well, this being needs just as much love and care as other beings. Otherwise, it doesn't seem right. And so there is some responsibility to this body and these emotions. If there isn't care for that, wouldn't it be the same if I didn't care for the neighbor? Like if there was one neighbor in the street, I'm going to help everyone else, but that creep over there, I'm not going to help him, right? That doesn't work. So then you see that the Brahma Viharas apply to everything all the time. And then in terms of like a parallelism, like how you do that, a relationship between these two projects, well, it's always about cultivating the wholesome and abandoning the unwholesome. So it's the same project, really. One is more social, one is kind of reflective, but really there, becomes less and less of a difference. Where it becomes different, I would say, is when the social overwhelms the capacity for awareness. Because when the social endeavors become so overwhelming that one is burnt out, then one is not good for anyone, oneself or others. So the consideration of one's own body and mind as a vehicle for service is that you have to take care of the vehicle. If you get a flat tire, you're not going anywhere. or you're running out of gas, right? So it's not selfish. It's just like you have your car, you take care of your car. So as the social part of our life becomes so stressed out, or also so addictive. That can be, it can be much more easy, even though you're feeling burnt out, to always be out and serving, and much more difficult to actually come home and sit and watch the restlessness in the mind or whatever it is. It can be much more difficult practice. But just seeing His Holiness or my teachers and so on, that when you do respect your own body and mind, your ability to serve is much, much more profound, partially because it's coming from right understanding, and also it's coming from a rejuvenated heart, can do a lot. So the issue for me here is not so much like another egotistic way to ask is whether it will expedite or slow down liberation. Well, I would say it will slow down liberation if you're developing unwholesome states of mind, and it would expedite liberation if you're developing wholesome states of mind. And I guess for social work and work in the world, the most troubling slowing down of awareness is exhaustion and too much to do, and a whole list of things that you can't keep going. And part of the problem is our society is too busy. So you not only do you have to deal with this, that, and the other, you have media to answer. So the society is not a society which values silence or space. And you do need silence and space for contemplation, which isn't selfish. It's more balanced, I would say. So a culture which is too busy draws you into cultural norms of being busy. You're praised for being busy and doing a lot of things, but is that healthy? Not necessarily. Okay. So I think that sort of covers it. So one question, thank you for your teachings. May I know if it is okay for a Buddhist to not believe in rebirth? Well, you have no choice. Either you believe in it, you don't believe in it, or you're agnostic, correct? So for me to say, thou shalt believe in rebirth, or hell is your destination, I mean, it would be pretty cruel of me to do that, right? But what you can know for sure is that you disbelieve, you don't believe, but also you can know that you don't know, if you're honest. So even the people who believe in rebirth, how many people who believe in rebirth have had psychic experiences? Actual kind of, or how much of it is our culture and in our texts? So that's one way of looking at like maybe like not believing in it and then feeling guilty because you don't believe in it. That's the oppression of dogma. That's the tyranny of dogma. If you don't believe, you don't believe, right? But then to argue with someone who does believe and say you're wrong, that is not appropriate to some sense because you don't know. And the same way with a person who believes in rebirth and says to you, you have to believe in that. It says, you can say to them, well, actually, you don't know either. So leave me alone. But what's more interesting, I would say, than that is the very sense of belief. And what is belief? Belief is a position, an intellectual structure. And then how to deal with that? Well, okay, the way that many of us, especially Westerners who are quasi-agnostic about that or kind of believe in it, one way to do it is to take it as a working hypothesis. Take it as a thought exercise. What if rebirth were true? What would that mean consequentially for your life? Not dogmatically, like that, you know, if you do this or that, like if you're not a good person, you'll be reborn as a turtle or something like that. Not that kind of thinking, but consequentially, what does it mean? Well, it would, like if you use it as a thought project, it would mean that it's a moral universe. There are moral consequences. Well, that's huge. That changes your perception of what the world is. Another question you might ask, is consciousness a physical phenomenon? In other words, is consciousness cease at the death of the body? is it an epiphenomena of the mind? Is that true? Well, if it is true, then you got nothing to worry about. Right? It's just a black hole. Buddhism says no. This is not a black hole. Consciousness is not a physical thing, but that the body is in consciousness, that the body is in awareness. So that's, you have to ask yourself, what's your basic sense of consciousness? So forget about rebirth, maybe, and then consider, well, what do I think that when the body dies, consciousness ceases? Which again is what they say, the hard question in philosophy. You don't know, right? You will find out, and then if there is consciousness which survives the death of the body, send me a postcard. Then I'll feel that I'll know, or a cloud formation or something. But still, you don't know. But as a thought exercise, it's quite interesting. So if you take it as a thought, if you already believe in rebirth, then you believe that consciousness is not simply a physical phenomenon. And then the thought exercise, it becomes, well, okay, there are moral consequences to living, to what I do. And those moral consequences aren't necessarily coming right in the next moment. They're coming right maybe in 20 moments, or coming right in a larger period of time. And maybe some of the moral consequences, I don't even see where they're coming from. That helps you answer the philosophical question of, why do bad things happen to good people? And why do good things happen to bad people? That's all religions struggle with that one. And so Christianity answers it one way, Islam answers it in one way, and Indian philosophy answers it in terms of cause and effect, morally based consciousness not being simply a one body incarnation. So if you make that thought exercise, see what it does to you. Rather than thinking you have to believe, or even believing, right? Like do that thought exercise. What might that mean? So I find that people from a Buddhist background or an Indian background who have that in their worldview can quite often use that as equanimity. Okay, this is some kind of resultant which I have to bear witness to. The downside of that is that it can lead to fatalism. So you see someone who's very poor, and maybe they're disabled, and they're on their street and they're begging for food, and you say, oh, it's their bad karma, and you walk away and do nothing. So even that strategy can have its downside, because it can lead to a fatalism and an activity. Oh, it's just my karma to be lazy. Let's have another beer, which isn't going to be very effective for you either. So if you're using like the ideas of rebirth, then you can also use them in a way where you can see rebirth of a sense of self. And that's another way of approaching. You can see how the sense of me as an individual arises. So if someone insults me and they call me an idiot or something, and then I walk away, and the language of my mind is that I'm never going to forgive them, I hate them, and so on, that's rebirth. That's a rebirth of a sense of self, isn't it? That I can know. And then I can see, well, what would be the end of rebirth is not attaching to the thoughts, feeling the emotion, being aware, non-grasping, letting go of desire. So if I'm working with rebirth like that as an ongoing thing that I can notice in real time, rather than some historical time, then surely whatever way rebirth does or doesn't work, I'm ready for both opportunities. Either I die peacefully, or if consciousness has a larger dimension, then that's taken care of too. So it's a win-win situation. So how does rebirth work psychologically? That you can notice. The habits of personality, like, sometimes people who live together for long, long periods of time, they get into habits of wrong speech, just saying things which are unkind or insensitive or dismissive because it becomes a habit. Well, that's rebirth, isn't it? I'm reborn as the grumpy person or the contemptuous person or the critical person or the put down person. That's rebirth. Yeah. And so awakening to that, say, oh wow, look at that. My speech is always as a put down of others or as a complaint about life or whatever it is. And you notice that's actually rebirth. So then we begin to address that and you let go of that and the mind has more sense of abiding as awareness and peace. Then if those habit patterns are something that condition a reincarnate possibility, you don't have to do that again. You don't have to get reborn as a grumpy person. So that's, I think, the fear mechanism of the ideas of rebirth. Careful. If you follow that, you'll be reborn as a grumpy toad or whatever it might be. But that's the use of rebirth as fear. And so all religions use fear, right? So if you're not good, if you misbehave, you will go down. And all religions seem to say down is bad. And if you're a good fellow and all the rest, then you'll go up. So it's always kind of up and down, which is interesting. But you don't know. Now, you don't want to be conditioned by fear, right? But you want to be conditioned by goodness. So if you see that rather than being but we do have the words hiriotapa, and hiriotapa is the idea of both fear of consequences and remorse for bad action, which isn't guilt. So fear of consequences is very helpful. Like if you're taking a corner on a motorway and a speed limit is 60 and you're going 120, fear is going to help you from crashing into the trees. That's a good thing. It's because the consequences are there. So same with our moral actions and the way we speak to each other. There are consequences for speech or whatever. And you can see those consequences in this life right now. Then the question is whether or not there is rebirth. The ultimate teaching that Buddha is offering us is the unconditioned and the unborn. And this is what transcendence is about. And so for myself, I don't think much about rebirth. It's never been a big thing in my head, but I do contemplate a lot the ideas of non-rebirth, non-death, non-becoming. That interests me because the rest seems to me worldly. Rebirth seems to me just kind of another ball game I have to play, maybe. I'm not sure. So it's not so important. I mean, I take it as a kind of working hypothesis, and it makes sense to me. But what I'm personally interested is there's the uncreated, the unconditioned, the unborn. Now, do you believe in that? Because that does require belief. That does require faith, right? Because you don't know that. And when I started, I thought, yeah, that makes sense to me. And so from that realistic faith, I would say, that interest impels my practice. So then, taking aside birth and rebirth, what about that language? Nibbana, the uncreated, the unoriginated, the unformed, the deathless. Does that stimulate your attention? Or culturally, have you taken on the perception that Nibbana is impossible? You need 100 million jhanas to do it. And only in the olden days were the guys or men who could do this. Women can't do it, of course. Sorry. And all the rest of it, right? These are all cultural things which are told to us that, I could never be enlightened. I want to be reborn as a monk. Don't do it. It's overhyped, I tell you. So what is the unconditioned, right? And what is the cultural norm that has been given to you? I just have to, I have to keep making merit, just accumulating merit. Not a bad idea, Not about it, but who's doing that? Who is the self that's doing that? I would say that if you can calm your mind and contemplate, then where's the deal waiting 5,000 lifetimes? Where does that make sense? So look at your own like perceptions around these things: rebirth, not rebirth, unconditioned nibbana. How does your mind take those up? Do they take them up as contemplations or as positions? There is rebirth, there isn't. That was a long answer for a short question. Dear Luang Por, thank you to the Sangha at Tisarana and organizing team for opportunity to learn Dhamma despite the pandemic. The last time we met was at Sampo Temple in Cameron Highlands. The memory of how the wonderful cooks paid their respects to you and Ajahn Pablo brings much warmth. I have a couple of questions. Is there a correct way to practice gratitude, or what is the difference between gratitude and contentment? I notice that when I have first world complaints, the default response from others and from me to myself is that you should be grateful that you have food to eat, bed to sleep, etc. Truthfully, it felt hollow. When it comes from others, it comes across as being judged, of complaining when others are worse off. If it comes from myself, to myself, it seemed more like being relieved that thank goodness it's not me. Or intellectually, it is just trying to avert the complaining thoughts on top of judging myself. I tried to watch how all of these thoughts feel like, but it's just too complicated. Is there a way to practice gratitude, i.e., not do it while feeling bad about life? What is the difference between contentment versus gratitude? Well, first of all, there's idealism. And the ideal of gratitude is that you feel grateful all the time, right? So when you're complaining that there's too many pieces of soya in your soup, that's called a first world complaint. You put too much soya sauce in the soup. That's called a first world complaint. And then idealism says you should be grateful. People would be dying to have a piece of tofu, right? And that's attachment to idealism, and then guilt or self-disparagement, which is heedless. So gratitude as an ideal that you hold to is a disaster. And it's similar to what I said, contentment with little. If I held contentment with little as an abstract ideal, which I always had to be, then it's impossible, because I'm not content with everything all the time. So it's just not Dharma. So I think the nub of the problem is the idealism as opposed to the aspiration. If I aspire to gratitude, why do I aspire to gratitude? Because my mom told me to be grateful? Or because it feels better? Personally, gratitude feels better to me than whining and complaining, right? But for some people, it doesn't. Some people, whining and complaining feels really good. Okay, that's your mind. That's where you live. So this isn't an ideal. This isn't for me idealism. It's like, yeah, gratitude feels really great. And also gratitude, which is not from idealism, but from real-time experience, it is also non-desire. When I look at something and I sincerely feel grateful for it, there's no desire there. So it's very close to nirodha, cessation of desire. But if I attach to the ideal of gratitude, and that is desire itself, I should be grateful. So that's what you have to look at. And when we do that to each other, you know, when someone is complaining and whining and we want them to be quiet, we quite often put them down that way because we're just so tired of their whining and complaining. So we do that. But it's probably more skillful to say to them, do you know how much you whine and complain? They might not want to hear that. You might not have a friend again. But wouldn't that be more helpful to wake them up? The fact is, like, does whining and complaining make you happy? Like, is it a good feeling? Do you want to die with that? When you're by yourself, do you whine and complain about yourself? So you enter into actually what's going on, the reality of the person's consciousness, rather than the ideal of what they should or shouldn't be. That's Kalyanamitta. You can't do that with everyone. You know, some people say it's none of your business. Fair enough, it isn't. But if you have Kalyanamitta and you see that someone is on a kind of habit of complaining and negativity, then your friendship with them is to try to awaken them to that pattern as suffering, not through preaching, you know, not through being a goody-good, not from contempt and putting them down. That doesn't work because that's not compassionate. So the first thing you have to do is you have to bear witness to their complaining, which is unpleasant. And then you might say, you know, to be honest, when you complain, I just feel yucky. You know, the feeling that it produces in me is not nice. And then you're not complaining about them. You're just saying, well, that's just how it affects me. And that's a very honest answer. Again, you need good friendship for that. So then you go beyond idealism and you really explore what complaining is about. Having done that, you also have the other. Gratitude takes place. You know, something happens. Someone offers you a cup of tea and they're very gracious and caring for you. So, oh, thanks. And that's gratitude. We all have that. So you recognize that. Oh, that's cool. I like that. And then you do it quite deliberately. You think, well, if it wasn't for Luang Por, it wasn't for the Buddha, if it wasn't for all the lay people, I could do this. And so that is a sincere reflection. Yeah, thank you. As opposed to an ideal. So when my mind is complaining about something, first and foremost, I have to say, oh, complaining feels this way. It's acceptance. And then I consider myself, do you really want to live in that realm? Do you want to go there? And then I can drop the thinking. And then it comes up again. So it's the running with the thinking that is the problem. Getting rid of the thoughts won't work. Following the thoughts won't work. And say, oh, this is complaining, feels this way. Don't go there. Don't go there. So it's an intelligent reflection on those attitudes. So what's the difference between contentment and gratitude? Well, contentment is contentment and gratitude is gratitude. I don't know if I can break it down anymore. How do you parse contentment? Contentment is non-desire, say. And gratitude is heartfelt gratitude. So just look at when you're just sitting around and there's nothing to do, you're content. It's like this, and then you remember something that someone did for you, which was really helpful, and oh, thank you. It's a kind of thank you feeling, isn't it? Is it right to deliberately recall? Is it right to deliberately recall unresolved memories during formal practice? When I do formal practice, my mind goes into recalling, fantasizing, and planning. The more hurtful or unresolved memories, feelings arise only during daily life activities. Should I make the effort to recall them during formal practice? Though I have tried and didn't feel the intensity or feelings as much as when they arise during life activities. It's very complicated, actually. So if someone suffers from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, if they were abused as a child, if they're just coming back from Afghanistan, and the memory patterns are so deeply imbued with disaster, and then their personality starts to function from those memory patterns, then modern psychology has a good way of approaching those through body awareness. But that takes good therapy, because you can re-traumatize the mind through just getting so caught up with all of that. I'm not a therapist, but I've talked to therapists about this. So therapists have a way of just touching those memories and then backing off the story and just feeling and processing it. So I would say there is a place for that, which has to be done very carefully. And so you have like somatic therapies, which seem to be helpful in that way. I'm not very good at that, but I do see sometimes that, you know, some people would be helpful if they had a more insightful professional angle around that. But then a lot of memories are, you know, if you follow them, they will take you to the feeling of that loss or disappointment or whatever, and you don't have to go there. So just your garden variety encounter with someone which was negative, whenever that memory comes up, it carries a valence, it carries a kind of tone of negativity. And if I just think through that memory, then that negativity gets reinvigorated. So you don't want to do that. So as soon as you notice a memory, if you just say it's memory and accept the tone as it is, whether it's deep or not, I think that's the best course of action. So I wouldn't recommend bringing up these memories unless it was so profoundly impacting that it really changed your behavior in ways which are out of your control. Then I think that's a problem. You know, you have some kind of subconscious fear which is projecting onto everything all the time, and you really need to get a therapist and look at it. Why is that happening? Because it's not conscious, you can't see it. But once it's conscious, then awareness should work. So when you get a chance to do like silent meditation, use a chance to develop composure. That we're very missing that, you know, composure, collectedness. Do that as much as you can. And then when the deeper memories get triggered, it's usually with those people, those situations. Then use that basis of composure to try to know how it is and not attach to it. So it's a complicated one. I've never been one for bringing up memories. I just try to notice memories. They feel this way, negative or positive, and I try to stay with no thought, no narrative. And that seems to work for me. Again, extreme instances of PTSD, I think, need to be addressed and very skillfully. Do you have any advice on how to find meaning or purpose in life? Furniture. Do furniture. Furniture's great. Well, for me, contemplating the deepest part of Buddhism, the unconditioned, is an incredibly interesting exercise. So there's lots of meaning there all the time. Trying to create environments of refuge and tranquility, and that is my social component. And then there's the craft component of my life, learning how to do things with skill. That's all very rewarding and meaningful. If I fell off a ladder and became quadriplegic and I couldn't do my craft, I'd still have the craft of the heart. If we all got arrested and the monastery got closed down because we're Buddhists, which will never happen in Canada, I hope. But for some reason, there was some big upheaval and all Buddhist monks had to go to prison, and I couldn't be in the social environment, and I was quadriplegic, I would still have the craft of the heart. It would still have meaning. Huh? So it seems to me, if the primary meaning is liberation of the heart and the deep understanding of Buddhism, then all secondary meanings can be fulfilling, but are not necessary, right? If the primary meaning of my life is making furniture, then of course, when lay people come and say, "Leave me alone, I'm leaving. I want to make furniture." Or if the primary aim of my life is to build monasteries and create beautiful monasteries, then I get very egotistical. Is this monastery better than another monastery? Is it the best monastery? Not happy. I'm not happy that way. So if you make the primary thing liberation of the heart, then everything you do, and I would say develop skills. These are wonderful things to do. Do something, right? Serve people, but that's not the primary thing. That's secondary. But I would say it's necessary because we have bodies, we have minds. So then you get the joy of sharing your resources, the joy of offering your skills, and just the joy of taking care of your family or your culture. And these are necessary. Right living is necessary. But if it all just goes down the tube in some ways, you didn't expect and you're disappointed, that's okay, because you still have the refuge of the heart. I think I have a few more questions here, but I think that's too much already. So let's leave it there for tonight. Okay, let's finish with the Metta Sutta. Please join. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties, and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm, and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove, wishing in gladness and in safety. May all beings be at ease, whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born. May all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another, even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child. So with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings, irradiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the sky and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness. One should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding, by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world.
Hantamayam ovadagatha sadhu karang kadamase. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
Thanks for bearing with me. We'll see you next one. Be well. Bye-bye.